Get your hands where I can see them. Now, the words come from behind her, sharp and sudden, cutting through the hum of the hotel lobby. 17-year-old Imani Carter turned slowly, the way her mother taught her. No sudden movements, nothing that could be misread, nothing that gives anyone an excuse. Her hands rise to her shoulders, palms open, fingers spread. Officer Dale Pruitt is already moving toward her. He is 41 years old, broad through the chest, and his hand is resting on the top of his holster the way men do when they want you to notice. His eyes do not look at her face. They move across her clothes, her backpack, the room key in her left hand, and land on nothing in particular. They land on her. You a guest here? Yes, sir. Imani's voice is quiet and steady. Room 411. That's so. Pruitt steps closer. Not a question. A statement delivered to remind her who is asking. Because the front desk called. Said there was someone who didn't belong on the 4th floor. I'm a guest, she says again. I can show you the key. Show me your ID. She moves her hand toward her back pocket, and Pruitt moves faster than she does. He grabs her left arm, spins her toward the wall, and shoves her into it. The marble is cold. The backpack strap cuts into her shoulder. A woman at the check and counter gasps. A man in a business suit takes a step toward the elevator and stops. A teenager near the gift shop window pulls out his phone, angling it, laughing at something he says to the person beside him. Imani does not cry out. She counts. That is 1. Unlawful detention without reasonable suspicion. 2. Physical force without cause. 3. Failure to identify herself as a law enforcement officer. 4. No Miranda warning. She counts. She does not know that in 47 minutes, Officer Dale Pruitt's career will be over. She does not know it, but it is already true. Pruitt calls it in as a suspected trespasser. He has her face against the wall, her wrists zip-tied behind her back, her room key dropped on the floor where he threw it, while the lobby watches and says nothing. He is radioing for a transport vehicle. He has no idea. Because the teenage girl he just slammed into a marble wall is the daughter of Constance Carter. And Constance Carter is the Attorney General of the state of North Carolina. Rewind. But this story doesn't start in a hotel lobby. It starts 47 years ago in a housing project in Greensboro, North Carolina, where a woman named Louise Carter raised 3 children in a 2-bedroom apartment on a home health aide salary and told them every morning before school, you are going to walk into rooms where people assume you don't belong. Walk in anyway. Know yourself. Document everything. Constance Carter, the eldest, heard that. She wrote it down. She kept it. She is now 51 years old. She graduated from Howard University at 19 with a dual degree in political science and criminal justice. She completed her law degree at UNC Chapel Hill, where she finished second in her class and spent her final year arguing civil rights cases in federal court as an extern. She spent 14 years as a federal prosecutor, specialized in civil rights violations and police misconduct. She spent another 8 years as the district attorney of Mecklenburg County before winning the statewide attorney general race by 11 points. She has prosecuted 43 law enforcement officers for misconduct during her career. She is, in the language of the courthouse, someone who knows exactly where all the bodies are buried. Her daughter Imani is 17, a junior at an arts magnet school in Charlotte, and a cellist whose playing has been described by her teacher as architectural. She is in Raleigh this weekend to compete in a statewide chamber music competition. She checked into the Meridian Hotel at 4:15 in the afternoon with a confirmation number, a credit card in her own name, and a key card for room 418. She was walking back from the vending machine on the 4th floor when she heard the elevator open behind her. That was 3 minutes before Dale Pruitt decided she did not belong. Dale Pruitt has been with the Raleigh Police Department for 11 years. He is twice Officer of the Month. His photo appeared in the department's community newsletter in 2021 with a quote about building bridges. His personnel file contains 19 complaints: excessive force, racial profiling, unlawful detention, every one of them reviewed and closed by an internal affairs division that, until 18 months ago, was led by Pruitt's former training officer. Not a single complaint reached the chief's desk. Not one. The system that created him had been very careful to protect him. In the lobby of the Meridian Hotel, that system is 47 minutes from collapse. Constance Carter is in a conference room on the 3rd floor of a building 6 blocks away when her phone buzzes. She is in the middle of a sentencing hearing debrief with 2 assistant AGs and a paralegal named Marcus, who has been with her office for 12 years. She glances at the screen. It is Imani's emergency contact number, the one they set up 2 years ago. The one Imani knows to use when words are not safe to say out loud. Constance Carter excuses herself from the room in 6 seconds. She is in the hallway in 8. She is on the phone in 12. She does not panic. She asks one question: "Are you hurt?" Imani says no. "But I'm in zip ties and they called a transport." Constance Carter says, "Put the officer on the phone." Pruitt, when handed the phone by a front desk clerk who has been watching this unfold with growing horror, does not take it. He tells Imani to stop talking. He tells the clerk to mind the desk. He checks his watch. He is confident. He has done this before, and it has always been fine. He has no idea that Constance Carter is already sending 3 messages from the hallway to her chief of staff, to the deputy director of the State Bureau of Investigation, and to a reporter she has known for 9 years who covers law enforcement accountability for the News and Observer. She does not send the messages in anger. She sends them in sequence, precisely, with a calmness that anyone who has seen her in a courtroom would recognize. Documentation wins. Emotion loses. Evidence is everything. Her mother told her that 47 years ago, and she has never stopped practicing it. 31 minutes. In the transport vehicle, a police transport van, not a cruiser. Because Pruitt called it a full trespassing situation, Imani Carter sits with her hands still bound and her chin level, and her eyes doing what her brain needs them to do, memorizing. The vehicle number, the driver's badge number, the time on the dashboard clock. She catalogs each one in a sequence she will recite in order the moment she is allowed to speak to anyone outside this vehicle. She has read every brief her mother has ever brought home. She has sat in on hearings since she was 11. She knows the name of the lead case on qualified immunity that her mother argued before the Fourth Circuit. She knows what unlawful detention requires the state to prove, and she knows that nothing meeting that threshold occurred in the lobby of the Meridian Hotel. She is 17 years old, and she is the calmest person in this vehicle. At the processing station, Pruitt completes his report. Suspected trespasser. Refused to identify. Resisted processing. He is writing the last line when his lieutenant, a woman named Shirley Odom, who has been with the department for 24 years and has seen enough to know the sound of a mistake in progress, walks up behind him and reads the last 3 sentences over his shoulder. "Dale," she says. "The name on the hotel reservation. Teenager gave a fake name. Running it now. The name." Lieutenant Odom says again. Pruitt looks up. Odom sets her phone on the desk in front of him, face up. On the screen is the hotel's system pull, run by someone in their records division in the last 4 minutes. The reservation is real. The name on the reservation is real. Room 418, Meridian Hotel. Registered to Imani Louise Carter, Charlotte, North Carolina. Emergency contact: Constance Marie Carter, Attorney General of North Carolina. Office of the Attorney General. The room is very quiet. 11 minutes. The door to the processing area opens and 2 people enter. The first is Marcus, the paralegal, who has been with the Attorney General's office for 12 years and who holds a small digital voice recorder in his left hand and states his name and credentials before anyone can tell him to leave. The second is a woman in a gray blazer who shows her identification without being asked. SPY, North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and who looks at Dale Pruitt the way a surgeon looks at a patient before explaining what needs to happen. Imani Carter rises from the bench. She straightens her posture. She looks at Officer Pruitt with the same measured calm she has maintained for the past 47 minutes, and she says, in a voice that does not waver, "My name is Imani Carter. I am a registered guest of the Meridian Hotel, room 418, check-in time 4:15 p.m., confirmation number ending in 7742. I was returning to my room from the 4th floor vending area when Officer Pruitt detained me without cause, applied physical force against my person, and placed me in restraints. I counted 11 violations during the course of this detention. Would you like me to recite them in sequence?" Pruitt opens his mouth. He closes it. The color leaves his face, starting at the forehead and moving downward, and for a moment he looks like a man who has just understood something he cannot ununderstand. Imani looks at him directly and says 3 words. "My mother's coming." She said it the way her mother would say it. Not as a threat, not as a relief, but as simple information, delivered to a room that needed to hear it. Constance Carter arrived at the processing station 6 minutes later. She did not arrive alone. She arrived with her chief of staff, a representative from the SPY, and a civil rights attorney named Derek Hollins, who had driven from Durham in under 40 minutes, and whose firm had filed suit against the Raleigh PD twice in the past 3 years. She did not speak to Dale Pruitt. She went directly to her daughter, checked her face and wrists, and stood beside her for 2 full minutes without saying anything to anyone else. Then, she turned around. What she said in that room was not about Dale Pruitt. It was never about Dale Pruitt. "My daughter is a cellist," she said. "She is here in Raleigh to compete." She checked into her hotel legally, paid for her own room with her own money, walked from the vending machine to her door, and was physically assaulted by a police officer who looked at her and saw a trespasser because of what she looked like. Not what she did, not what she said, what she looked like. She paused. That is the case I have spent my career building toward. Not this officer specifically. The system that produced him, protected him, and handed him a badge every morning. She did not raise her voice once. "If I weren't who I am," she continued, "my daughter would have spent the night in a cell on a trespassing charge that would have followed her for years. I have to be clear about that, because that is the point, and I will not allow anyone in this room to miss it. The injustice is not that this happened to my daughter. The injustice is that it happens every day to young people whose mothers are not attorney generals. My position got her home tonight. Her position never should have put her in danger." She looked at the officers standing along the far wall. "You will all be hearing from my office." She was not wrong. The SPY opened a formal investigation into Officer Dale Pruitt's conduct within 72 hours. The investigation expanded within 2 weeks into the Internal Affairs Division that had reviewed and closed 19 complaints without forwarding a single one. The division director, a man named Frank Cantrell, who had been Pruitt's training officer 12 years before, was placed on administrative leave within the month. The chief of police, who had inherited Cantrell's appointment from the previous administration and had not removed him, announced his retirement 14 days after Constance Carter held a press conference on the steps of the State Bureau of Investigation building that was viewed in full by more than 2 million people. Dale Pruitt was terminated from the Raleigh Police Department 60 1 day after the incident. He was charged with assault, unlawful restraint, and civil rights violations under state law. The federal civil rights investigation opened 3 months later. He entered a guilty plea to the state charges 17 months after that and was sentenced to 14 months of supervised release, 200 hours of community service, and a permanent bar from law enforcement employment in the state of North Carolina. His 19 dismissed complaints were all reopened. 11 of the complainants were contacted directly by the Attorney General's office and offered resources for civil remedies. 7 of those cases settled. The department paid $2.3 million. Lieutenant Shirley Odom, who walked over to Dale Pruitt's desk and showed him the hotel reservation, was the only officer in the processing area that evening who cooperated fully with the spy from the first interview. She requested a transfer to the department's training division and was granted it. She now runs a program on de-escalation and civil rights that has been adopted by 4 other departments in the state. She is not absolved by this. She saw what was happening long before that evening and did not act soon enough, but she chose, when it mattered most, to do the harder thing. The teenager near the gift shop window who filmed and laughed did not know who he was filming. He posted the video without knowing. It reached 400,000 views before he took it down. He has never publicly said anything about it. One anonymous donation of $200 arrived at the North Carolina NAACP Legal Defense Fund from an account traceable only to a prepaid card purchased in Raleigh. Whether that was him or not is not something anyone can say for certain. But someone watched that video and decided they needed to do something with what they'd seen. Imani Carter competed the next day. She arrived at the competition venue on time, with her cello, wearing the same calm expression she had worn in the lobby of the Meridian Hotel. She placed second in the statewide competition. Her teacher said her performance was the most controlled he had ever heard her play. On the drive back to Charlotte that evening, somewhere on I-85 between Sanford and the Cabarrus County line, she asked her mother a question. "Did you think about just telling him who you were when you called?" Constance Carter drove for a moment, without speaking. The road stretched ahead of them in the dark, the headlights reading the white lines, one by one. "No," she said finally, "because if you have to announce your mother's title to be treated like a human being, the problem isn't your mother's title." Imani looked at the road. "The next kid he stops," her mother said. "What does she do?" The car was quiet for a long time after that. The kind of quiet that has work in it. The kind that sits between what happened and what still needs to happen, and refuses to pretend there is no distance left to cross. Someone has to be watching. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something you needed to put somewhere, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because Imani Carter's story isn't singular. It's a pattern. And patterns only break when people refuse to stop naming them. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to decide whether to announce who you are or stay silent and let the injustice speak for itself? What did you choose? Subscribe if you believe that documentation defeats denial. We'll keep building the record together.